Mayonnaise, the condiment found in kitchens on every continent, is French, though it's
You won't believe what I just discovered. France has been secretly shaping the world in ways we were never told about. Today, we are uncovering 20 French inventions you did not know existed. These are innovations that were set to change the world that we had absolutely no clue about them being French. So, buckle up because this is going to be so eye opening.
There is a country in Western Europe that quietly handed the modern world some of its most essential tools. It is a place where artists, engineers, and dreamers once collided in a single city and accidentally rewrote the future. Most people think of France and picture the Eiffel Tower, expensive wine, and fashion weeks.
Yes.
But what they rarely picture is how a country of 68 million people transformed every kitchen, every hospital, every living room, and every pocket on Earth. The real story of French invention is not taught in most classrooms. It is scattered across history in small, almost invisible moments that turned out to matter more than anyone expected. Because once you start pulling on the thread of French innovation, you realize just how many things you use every single day were born in France. And that is exactly where things get fascinating. So let's start from the very beginning, because the first invention on this list is not flashy. It does not have a famous museum dedicated to it, and most people walk past it 100 times without thinking twice. But without it, the modern world looks almost unrecognizable. The story of how France shaped global communication begins earlier than most people imagine. Long before the internet, before telegraphs, before even reliable postal systems, France gave the world something no civilization had ever successfully built before: a network of long-distance visual messaging. In the late 1700s, Claude Chappe invented the optical telegraph, a system of mechanical towers stretching across the French countryside, each one inside of the next, each one capable of sending coded messages from Paris to the far edges of the country in under an hour. For a world that had previously relied on horses and riders to carry urgent information, this was nothing short of miraculous. Governments across Europe, and eventually entire continents, copied the concept. The idea of connecting distant points through a chain of signals became the intellectual foundation for the telegraph, the telephone, and ultimately the internet itself. France did not invent the internet, but the thinking that made it possible, that signal travels through French history.
Wow.
And then there's the camera, not the phone in your pocket, but the original device that made capturing a moment physically possible for the first time in human history. Louis Daguerre developed the
No
daguerreotype
way.
in the 1830s, creating the world's first practical photographic process. Before Daguerre, the only way to preserve an image of someone or something was to paint it. After him, reality could be frozen in time with a single exposure. What he started eventually became portrait photography, photojournalism, cinema, and the selfie. Every image you've ever seen online traces its lineage back to a Frenchman staring at a silver plate and realizing he was holding the future in his hands. But French contributions didn't stop at communication. They went straight into the body. Louis Pasteur is a name most people recognize vaguely from school. But what he actually built goes so far beyond what most people realize that it is worth slowing down on. In the mid-1800s, Pasteur proved that microscopic organisms, bacteria, were responsible for disease and food spoilage. This was not just a scientific curiosity, it was a complete dismantling of everything medicine had believed up to that point. Before Pasteur, doctors did not wash their hands between patients. Food rotted because people thought the air itself caused it. Infections killed people who had otherwise survived surgery. Simply because nobody understood what germs were, Pasteur changed that. His germ theory of disease became the backbone of modern medicine. His development of pasteurization, the process of heating liquids to kill bacteria, is the reason the milk in your refrigerator does not make you sick. And his pioneering work on vaccines laid the groundwork for every vaccination program that has
no
saved hundreds of
idea.
millions of lives
What?
since. The next time someone mentions public health, or the next time you drink a glass of cold milk without a second thought, you are living inside a French invention. And speaking of medicine, the stethoscope. Before René Laennec invented it in 1816, doctors had no practical way to listen to a patient's heartbeat without pressing their ear directly against the chest. Laennec, reportedly feeling uncomfortable doing exactly that with a female patient, rolled up some paper into a tube and discovered that sound traveled through it with remarkable clarity. That improvised paper tube became one of the most iconic tools in medical history. Today, no image of a doctor feels complete without one hanging around their neck, and it all started with a bit of embarrassment and a rolled-up piece of paper in Paris. France did not limit its genius to science.
Pencil?
It reached into daily life and transformed ordinary things so thoroughly that their origins are now almost impossible to imagine. Take the pencil. Most people know the pencil exists, but far fewer know that the modern standardized pencil, with its reliable hardness scale and consistent quality, was developed by Nicolas Jacques Conté in 1795. Before Conté's method, pencils varied wildly in quality and depended on a single graphite mine in England. Conté found a way to mix graphite powder with clay, fire the mixture in a kiln, and produce a writing instrument that could be made anywhere, at any quality level, and sold affordably. Every pencil you have ever picked up traces back to a French engineer who decided that inconsistency was unacceptable. Or consider the metric system. Before France introduced it during the Revolution, measuring things was an absolute nightmare. Every region, every country, and sometimes every city used its own units of measurement. A foot in Paris was not the same as a foot in London. Trade was chaotic, science was imprecise, and then France proposed something radical: a single universal system based on the physical properties of the Earth itself. The meter, the kilogram, the liter. Today, every country on the planet, except 3, officially uses the metric system. It is arguably the most universally adopted human invention in history, and it was born entirely from a French desire to make the world make sense. Now here's where the surprises really start piling up, because French inventions don't just sit in history textbooks. They live in your home, your wardrobe, and on your dinner table. Mayonnaise, the condiment found in kitchens on every continent, is French. Though its exact origin is debated, the version that conquered the world emerged from French culinary tradition, and French chefs refined and spread it across Europe and beyond. The same goes for the bechamel sauce, the foundational white sauce that underlies dozens of dishes across global cooking. And canning, the technology that keeps food safe for months or years without refrigeration, was invented by Nicolas Appert in the early 1800s, after Napoleon offered a prize for any method that could preserve food for his armies.
Wow.
Appert figured it out, and in doing so, changed the entire global food supply chain. Every emergency kit, every shelf-stable product in every supermarket on Earth exists because of a French chef who took Napoleon's challenge seriously. Then there was the hot air balloon. In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers launched the first successful manned flight in history over Paris, sending 2 men into the sky in a paper and fabric balloon, while thousands of spectators watched from below in complete disbelief. It was the first time human beings had ever left the ground. Aviation, the idea that the sky was a place people could actually go, was born in France. The Wright brothers are celebrated for their airplane, and rightly so. But the dream they fulfilled was first made real by 2 French papermakers who looked up and refused to accept that the sky was out of reach. Some of the most powerful French inventions weren't machines or food. They were ideas, Braille is one of the most quietly important systems ever created. In 1824, Louis Braille, who had been blinded by a childhood accident, developed a tactile reading and writing system made of raised dots that could be read with the fingertips. He was just 15 years old when he created the first version. Before Braille, blind individuals had almost no way to independently access written information. After him, an entirely new world of literacy, education, and independence opened up. Today, Braille is used in virtually every language on Earth, on menus, on medicine labels, on elevator buttons, and in library books. A 15-year-old French boy changed the lives of hundreds of millions of people across centuries. Cinema itself is another French gift to the world. The Lumiere brothers didn't just record moving images. They screened them publicly for the first time in 1895 in a Paris cafe to a paying audience who reportedly screamed in terror when a train on screen appeared to approach. They had never seen anything like it because nothing like it had ever existed. Every movie, every television show, every streaming series you've ever watched traces its origin to that Paris cafe and two brothers with a camera and a dream. But France's contributions don't stop at the dramatic. They extend into the structural things that shape how societies function. The modern ambulance system was formalized by Dominique Jean Larrey, Napoleon's chief surgeon. He invented mobile surgical units that travel to the battlefield instead of waiting for the injured to come to them. This idea that medical care should move toward the patient rather than the patient toward care is the philosophical foundation of every ambulance service operating in the world today. Before Larry, wounded soldiers were often left where they fell until the battle ended. After him, saving lives became an active pursuit, not a passive waiting game. Even something as seemingly simple as the sewing machine has a French chapter. Barthélemy Timonier built the first functional sewing machine in 1830, a decade before American versions appeared. It was so threatening to French tailors who feared losing their livelihoods that an angry mob reportedly destroyed his factory. He was ruined. The machine survived and spread, and eventually industrialized clothing production worldwide. An entire global fashion industry runs partly on the back of a French invention that its own country tried to destroy. There is a pattern running through all of these stories that is worth pausing on. French inventors rarely worked in quiet comfort. Many of them faced ridicule, poverty, or outright hostility. Pasteur was mocked before he was celebrated. Braille's system was suppressed by his own school administrators for years after he created it. The Montgolfier brothers were told the sky was not for people. And yet, in almost every case, the ideas survived because good ideas have a way of persisting even when the people who create them are pushed aside. Persistence matters. That persistence reflects something deep in French intellectual culture. A belief that understanding the world is not just an academic exercise, it is a moral one. That if something can be figured out, it should be. That knowledge shared is always more powerful than knowledge held. The list of French inventions reads like a map of human progress itself. The ambulance, the photograph, the hot air balloon, the cinema, the metric system, Braille, pasteurization, the stethoscope, canning, the pencil, the optical telegraph, the sewing machine. Each one arrived in a moment when someone decided that the world as it was simply was not good enough. And what makes this story so compelling is not just the inventions themselves. It is how thoroughly they have disappeared into the background of daily life. You do not think about the metric system when you weigh ingredients. You do not think about Pasteur when you pour milk into your coffee. You do not think about the Lumiere brothers when the opening credits of your favorite film roll across the screen. These ideas have become so embedded in ordinary life that they no longer feel like inventions at all. They feel like facts of the universe, but they were not facts. They were choices. made by specific people in specific moments, in a country that has never stopped believing that a better idea is always possible. And maybe that is the real invention France gave the world. Not just the tools, the systems, and the sciences, but the stubborn, romantic, completely French belief that the world can always be made more beautiful, more just, and more intelligible than it currently is. And that if you are willing to think hard enough, work long enough, and ignore the people telling you it cannot be done, eventually you will be proven right. So the next time someone mentions France, you might think about the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre. But behind those landmarks is a country that handed humanity some of its most essential tools, and then quietly moved on to inventing the next thing. From a 15-year-old boy reading with his fingertips, to two brothers watching a balloon rise over Paris, to a man staring at a silver plate and seeing the future, France has spent centuries doing what it does best, looking at the world and imagining something better. And that is only 20 inventions. The list goes on, and so does France.
Wow. Can you believe how much we didn't know? Like, these 20 inventions really prove that history has been hiding some really, really incredible stories right under our noses. Like, I'm truly shocked, and this is really, really eye-opening. Like, yeah, the next time I hear France, I'm not going to be thinking about the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to be thinking about how they literally invented the study on germs and bacteria and infection, and the invention of camera, hot air balloons, and so on and so forth. Which inventions shock you the most? I want to hear all of it. I want to hear what blew your mind. So let me know in the comment section. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope I see you guys in my next episode. Have a lovely day ahead of you. Bye.